What's up, everybody? It's your boy Devon Taylor here, aka Deezus, and this is my podcast, Deezus Take the Reel. No, this is not a religious podcast. It's a podcast where we're talking movies, we're talking life, and we're talking all sorts of weird shit. And this is the start of a very creepy block of Deezus Take the Reel episodes. We got 3 horror-filled episodes coming up in light of me heading to the Overlook Film Festival, which I am fucking jacked about. Oh my goodness. I will literally be watching movies in the Overlook Hotel here in mere days. And to kick it off, I have a very special guest. I've been really excited to get him on the show. I've been following him on Twitter for a long time. I love all the stuff you post, your horror ledger. He is a horror author, and I just love all the creepy pictures you post as well. Those always just make me happy. The guest today is horror author Tim Miller.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I am super excited to have you on. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. So, you are the first episode in this horror trilogy I'm about to do. I was telling you before, pre-recording. For some reason, I don't really get to do as much horror episodes as I'd like, because I fucking love horror movies. I'm kind of like a new horror nut. I've always loved them, but I just now become obsessed with them, the past year or so, And this will only be the 3rd horror episode I've gotten to do, so we're doing 3 of them because this is my show and I do whatever the hell I want. So, to kick it off, we are talking underrated slashers today. Tim Miller picked the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I am super stoked to talk about. But of course, I gotta let the man himself let you guys know who he is. This is Who the Hell Are You? The opening segment of Deezus Take the Reel. From your mouth, Tim Miller, your words. Who the hell are you? Tell people, what do you do, man?
Well, I'm a horror writer. I've got about 43 books published. I publish through my own imprint, Gut Wrench Productions, which is pretty much just me. I mostly do my own covers. Usually my covers, they're kind of collaborations with me and either artists and mostly cover models, which are friends of mine or whoever, a lot of up-and-coming models, whatever. We work out whatever arrangements we're going to make. They take the pictures, they send them to me. Sometimes they'll do the edit, I'll help with the edit, and then we'll get the cover. I'll finalize the cover. So that's kind of become a trademark of seeing me, the scantily clad girls on my covers, which people seem to like a lot. So I pretty much, but I'm kind of a one-man operation. I do all that. Publish the books. My genre is extreme horror, so my stuff's really hardcore slash and gash. I don't back down from the gore and the blood and guts and stuff. It's pretty intense stuff. It's not for everybody. It's got a pretty good niche audience, though. A lot of people do like that kind of thing. A lot of mainstream horror tends to be more, ghost story type stuff, paranormal activity type stuff. People that want something more intense, they want something more cringeworthy, they read my kind of stuff. So that's what I do. I live here in Texas. Most of my stories take place somewhere in Texas. Usually fictional places in Texas that I make up, but that's pretty much the gist of what I got going on.
Yeah, you do some really awesome stuff. I've read a couple of your stuff. I read a little bit of Dollhouse because, like you said, all the covers are very intriguing and fascinating. That's what really always catches my eye, and I'm pretty sure that's how I started following you in the first place. I think I just saw you posting some really cool horror pictures, and I was like, oh, what's this? And then that's kind of how I stumbled onto you. But yeah, you have some really cool stuff. And shouldn't have told me about this modeling thing, because I do a little modeling and photography on the side, Tim. So if you need a horror cover with a skinny black guy, you just let me know, and I will send something to you. But,
all right.
But you do some really awesome stuff. You really know your horror. And to kick things off, I have a game, because Deezus Take the Reel would not be a regular episode without a game that I came up with about a couple hours ago, because that's pretty much how it always goes. So the game today is called Under and Over. I have a list of some horror movies. Just says, we talk on Twitter occasionally, but it's just I like to get a sensibility of the guesses, their movie taste and such. So I have a list of some popular horror movies, and I'm going to have you say if they are underrated or overrated and why, since we are talking underrated slasher movies today. So, make sense?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I have 10 of them. So in no particular order, The Evil Dead, because I have opinions on all these too. Like, these are all ones that I picked that I do think are under or overrated in some sense. So I'll give my explanation after you do. So first one up, okay. The Evil Dead.
I'll say overrated.
You know what? I actually agree with you there because I feel like we are in the minority here. Why do you find it overrated?
Well, I love the movie. It's almost got this bizarre. I remember when it came out. I remember seeing it, and people back then didn't even like it that much. I remember it wasn't until the remake came out that people went completely berserk over the remake, and I like the original and I like the remake. I like both. They're just, to me, they're two different movies. But
oh yeah,
I don't know. People act like they almost act like, not like a cult status, but it's almost like this weird cult following about it. And half these people that act that way weren't even alive when the movie came out. And I don't know. I'm just kind of like,
yeah, that is true.
Even Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell have said that they had a crap budget and a lot of it was thrown together, and it really wasn't what they were shooting for at the time, but it was the best they could do with what they had at the time. And it's a good little movie. But it's not quite the holy grail of horror like what some people act like.
Yes, I agree completely. Actually, it does not hold up the way that people make it out to seem. You can definitely tell how cheap some of the effects were and stuff. And the very first one, it didn't really know its tone. It was kind of conflicted between whether it was going to be a horror or a horror comedy. And then Evil Dead 2 and then, Army of Darkness is where they really hit their mark. And Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi even said, is pretty much what he wanted to do with Evil Dead 1 if they had more money. So, and I love the remake. I love the remake more than the original, actually.
I love the remake. I love the gore in the remake.
Oh, it's so brutal, so bloody.
And the dark tone to it and everything. It just felt a lot more like a real horror movie than the original. The original, I thought the original had a lot of kind of dark comedy to it and stuff that was part of its charm, but
oh yeah, no, I agree. Like 100%.
Some people act like you say you like the remake and they go all bonk. I'm like, you can like both movies. It's not like the original
is gone,
gets, like, cast into flames because you like the other one.
Right? It's almost like, you like the new one. That means it was the same thing when the Ghostbusters shenanigans all went down. Everybody was losing their fucking minds over it. Speaking of remakes, my next one is actually a remake that I think did better than original, and that's pretty agreed upon. But I want to see what your opinion on this movie is. The Fly, Cronenberg's The Fly.
Which one?
Cronenberg's The Fly, the 81 version. Underrated or overrated?
I think that one's kind of underrated. I really like that one.
I do too. I think it is some great body horror, especially for the time it was made. Probably my favorite Jeff Goldblum performance. And you got Gina Davis in there, also fantastic. But it's one of those horror classics I think people talk about enough. Like, it does not come up enough, I don't think.
Yeah, it doesn't really get mentioned a lot with horror stuff. And I remember seeing it. I saw it a lot when I was a teenager. I used to rent that all the time. And yeah, it was really gross the way he was falling apart at the end and everything. You just don't see that as much anymore.
No, yeah, body horror is kind of been forgotten about a little bit in modern horror, but The Fly is like one of the first like horror movies like I actually remember like watching like all the way through and like actually understanding what's going on. I watched it for the first time when I was like 7, and I remember the arm wrestling scene where he breaks dude's arm. I lost my shit. I was like, oh my god, it was such a good scene. All right, so the next one. Me and you have actually talked about this on Twitter a bit. So, Hellraiser, underrated or overrated for you?
Hellraiser?
Or do you think it's properly rated even?
I think that one that one's a pretty good one. See, I'm a big fan of that one. And see, it's weird because I read the book, and I'm a big fan of the story of the Hellbound Heart. So, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like you see kind of two different levels of it, having read the story and then seen the movie. So I feel like there's some extra depth in there. I'm not one of these people that are like, oh, I read the book, so this, but I mean, sometimes, when you read the story, you have a little bit extra layer of it. But I feel like it gets a pretty good amount. I mean, I know sometimes, once again, people get a little crazy with it sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you saw my reaction to it. I was very disappointed whenever I watched Hellraiser, because at least with my movie friends and stuff, like, I know people that love Hellraiser to death. Like, people, oh my god, Hellraiser, oh my god, Pinhead, oh my gosh, this. And then I watched it, and I was just kind of like, the first half was interesting, and then it just was kind of like, okay. And then out of that hour and 32 minutes, we maybe have 4 minutes of Pinhead throughout that entire movie. Well, like, what was up with... It was like that thing that they did, like, back in the day, like, with Friday the 13th and Halloween, when they're like, hey, look, the killer is not the actual killer of the movie.
Well, and sometimes, too, I know when you have a movie that's been built up so much before you actually see it, that happens to me a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the hype monster is real.
That happens to me with almost every indie film that comes out the past couple years, like The Void and The Babadook and all these other movies that they're like, the scariest movie of the year, and it gets all these awards, and there's all this hype, and then I watch it, and it's like a snooze fest. And I probably would have liked it had it not already had all this hype leading up to it about people having heart attacks during screenings of it,
right.
People throwing up during screenings, and all this other stuff, and
yeah,
all this.
It's even worse now. Like, the hype monster, as far as, because everybody's sharing the previews, and you get reviews weeks ahead of time now, and yeah, the hype monster is definitely real. This is another one that I watched pretty recently, because, like I said, I'm still, like, fairly new as far as, like, being, like, a big horror fan. So I still have a lot of classics to catch up on. So I just watched The Thing recently. How do you feel about Carpenter's The Thing?
I've never been a big... I don't know. It's okay. Maybe it's a little overrated. I've never been a huge fan of it. I've seen it a few times. It's okay. It's got some cool scenes, but I never got that into it for me.
I was the same way. I watched it, and I enjoyed the music. I enjoyed, the transformation scenes and stuff. Definitely appreciate them. Always appreciate Kurt Russell. But beyond that, though, yeah, I was kind of like, okay, that's a thing. But didn't even mean that one. But I was like, okay, cool. Like, and all my friends, like, lost their shit. Everybody was like, this is the movie that, like, we really thought you would love. Like, and I always, because I love Carpenter, I was like, this should be right up my alley. I don't know why I haven't seen it by now. And then it was kind of just like, all right, like, I appreciate it. Like, I love seeing all the homages and, like, modern day horror to it. All right, this next one's a little bit of a deeper cut. Pumpkinhead. How do you feel about the Pumpkinhead series?
Have I ever seen that whole thing?
Ooh, you haven't seen it all?
I'm trying to remember. It's been a really long time. I mean, I think I was like in 7th or 8th grade when I saw it, and I don't know if I ever saw the entire... It was only the first one, and I only seen part of it, I think.
Oh, wow. See...
I've been meaning to go back and watch it, but I've just so much other stuff that I have. And see, I guess maybe it's underrated because it doesn't get that much... You don't hear about it that much, you know what I mean?
Exactly, and you already know where I'm leaning. I think Pumpkinhead is like one of the forgotten, like, monster movies, and it is so good. And even Pumpkinhead 2 is also really, really good. I think they're both fantastic movies. They're both very different, too. Like, they are almost like completely different types of movies. They're like vaguely, like, loosely connected. But I love the design of Pumpkinhead. I thought it was really good for that time. Okay, so, and we talked about remakes earlier, and this movie didn't have a remake, but it had one of those 15-year later sequels. But I'm asking about the original Blair Witch Project.
Oh, yeah, that one was overrated.
Yeah, it was very much of its time. I rewatched it, and it's just like, okay, you can imagine, like, whenever it came out, and, like, people thought it was real still and shit. Like, yeah, I can totally understand, but, like, you watch it now, it does not hold up.
Well, here's what's weird, because I liked it when because I'm old, I first saw it in the theater, right, when it first came out. And I liked it when I saw it. Now, I didn't love it, but I liked it when I saw it, because it was kind of a new thing, and it was kind of cool how they did it and all that. But then over the years, I hated what they did to film.
Yeah.
Because I've grown to hate found footage, because ever since that movie came out and cell phones came out, now everybody just has, and I've joked with my wife that I want to make a found footage film where we're going to run around with our phones and shout fuck at each other over and over and over off camera for about 90 minutes. And then we're going to knock tables over and scream and yell and make the camera shake. And then I'm going to drop the camera and I'm going to hold it up real close to my face and breathe heavily into it for a few minutes, for a few seconds, and go, and then drop the camera and make it go black. And that'll be every single found footage ever made since the Blair Witch Project.
Oh my God, I actually want to see that though. Like, can I produce this movie for you? Because I think we would make oodles of money because we wouldn't have to spend anything. Like, oh my God, I was actually like cracking up, like envisioning that. But yeah, found footage has definitely been done into the dirt. And I think if you can find a smart way to use the found footage, then it works. But oftentimes than not.
I saw one recently on Amazon Prime that I actually really liked, and I was impressed because I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. But one of my friends told me, she's like, "This is a really good found footage movie. You might like it." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna check it out. If I don't like it, I'm gonna hold responsible." And I liked it.
Yeah, I had that recently with The Sacrament. I thought they did it.
That one's really kind of not found footage, though. It's
not found footage, I suppose.
A documentary film crew. So.
Yeah, I thought it was like weird that they like use like a real magazine in that movie. I think they were like,
I know, I was kind of So that was I like The Sacrament. This one was called Capture, Kill, Release, and it's about this couple that they want to kill somebody to see what it's like to kill somebody, and they're documenting on video. And there's like a scene where they're like at Home Depot trying out various torture weapons and stuff.
And this is on Prime?
It's on Amazon Prime, yeah.
Oh, I'm so watching that.
And they do really good because when it comes time to kill the people and stuff, you know, one person's holding the camera while the other person's doing it. So you don't have the shaky camera thing, because that means shaky camera means we don't have the budget for special effects and gore, so we're going to make the camera shake and drop the camera so everything happens off camera so you can't see anything. That
sounds so awesome.
What's that?
I said that movie sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good. I was actually pretty impressed with it. I wasn't expecting much going in. I was like, I don't know, but it actually ended up being pretty good. It was actually pretty neat. Yeah. And the girl ended up being really, really crazy, which was kind of funny in kind of a cool way.
Huh.
So yeah, Capture, Kill, Release is what that one's called. So
I am adding it to the list.
But about 9 out of 10 times, I'll see a movie I'm looking through Amazon or Netflix, and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting, and I turn it on, I'm like, oh my God, found footage. And I turn it right off like immediately.
Huh. Well, that sounds interesting. Well, speaking of another movie that involves footage of some sort, I'm talking, and this is also sort of a remake as well, the 2002 The Ring.
Oh, that one, yeah, it was kind of overrated, I thought. It was all right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jaded. Some people act like it was so scary and stuff, and I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's underrated. I think it is.
Really?
Yeah. For one reason, I love Gore Verbinski, and I think he just as far as like making a horror movie like very aesthetically pleasing, like because in the early 2000s, horror was kind of in a rough place. Like in the late 90s, early 2000s, we didn't really get a whole lot of good horror. And I thought The Ring was one that they did really well. It was an example of getting an actual good actress to be in the lead instead of like, you know, some unknown no name or something. So you actually got a good actress in the lead. It's filmed very, I think it's really beautiful the way that they do with the color scale and everything. And I think it's creepy as hell. I think it works. The sequels, maybe not so much. But I think they did a really good job, and also translating a foreign film and making it pretty good. This one is a cult classic. It's become a favorite around Halloween, and I haven't seen a whole lot of anthology movies. And it kind of started me on watching horror anthologies a little bit more. Trick or Treat.
I like that movie. I've always liked that movie.
Yeah, I wish they've been talking about this sequel for the past 10 years, and it's been like in and out.
I'm not gonna say over or underrated. I know a lot of people like Sam. He's kind of a favorite. I've got a little Sam Funko Pop. I got a couple Funko Pops, but yeah, I've got a Sam Funko Pop and all that. So that's one of my favorite little anthologies. That's pretty good.
I think it's underrated. I'm glad that it's starting to find an audience, and it's been coming around a lot more, especially after he did Krampus, and then people saw and then go back and watch Trick or Treat, and they're like, wait, why hasn't this guy made more movies? So I don't know. I think it's a super underrated one. And the very last one, I feel very strongly on this one. You'll have to take a guess to which way. But this one is The Strangers, the abduction movie from not too long ago.
Let me see. Once again, it was okay, but I'm gonna. Once again, I'm going by people's reactions to it. I'm gonna say it's maybe a tad bit overrated. Once again, people just get really berserk over it, and for me, it was a really slow movie. And I don't know. I'm kind of an action-oriented person. I like stuff to happen, and
oh yeah,
I can handle a slow burn, but there's got to be some kind of payoff.
You literally just took the words out of my mouth. I think this movie is so fucking overrated. Like, I hear people talk about when they talk about like the scariest movies of all time or their favorite horror movies of all time, and they like talk about The Strangers. I'm like, did we watch the same movie? Like, it's fine, but just like exactly what you just said. Like, I can watch a slow burn and I'll enjoy it if the payoff is worth it. And the payoff to The Strangers is so disappointing. I don't know. I think people, like you said, people will go berserk over this movie, and I'm just like it's literally one of those ones. I'm like, I feel like we watch completely different movies.
I wonder sometimes with horror if it's not like religion, like somehow the collective latches on to something and people just say they love it and they go crazy over it because they think they're supposed to or something. And
yeah, I'll agree on that. And because
deep down, not even like it that much, but because somebody told them they're supposed to and they want to fit in, that's what they.
Yeah, because The Strangers even had some like real mainstream appeal. It wasn't just like a cult hit or anything. Like, people really loved that movie, and I was just kind of like, well, all right.
Well, it's like paranormal movies. Nothing happens in it, so everybody loves it for some reason.
Yeah, me and you are on the same page. I like more blood. I like all the kills. Like, I want shit going down in these movies, and that'll bring up a nice point to the movie that you picked. But that'll go ahead and do it for our under-over game. Before we get into the bulk of the movie, just a few things to mention, guys. One, make sure you guys are getting those iTunes reviews. 5-star reviews on iTunes are fantastic because, one, I love to read about myself. I'm into myself in that way. And two, it'll also help people find the show and more people to listen. So get those iTunes reviews, and of course I will read them on the Deezus and T-Money episodes. So get those iTunes reviews out there. And, just help spread the word, guys. Spread the dope word. That's all I ask of you guys. And, of course, check out the Patreon account. $1 a month can help make this show bigger and better and longer and all sorts of other cool shit. But, the stuff isn't free, guys. $1 a month can help make a very big deal. So go out to patreon.com/Deezus Take the Reel. And, of course, guys, I am going to Oregon in 2 days. In 48 hours, I will be up in Mount Hood at the Overlook Film Festival. I am I'm working it and covering it, so this is going to be a really good time, guys. I'll get to meet a lot of people behind the scenes and stuff, but then I'm also going to see some fucking badass movies. You got Stephanie from Blumhouse is going to be premiering there. The Bad Batch is going to be playing. Psychopaths will be playing. There's some secret screening that I bought tickets to anyways. Who knows what the hell that's going to be. Fingers crossed it's one of A24's horror movies. But, guys, it's going to be fucking bananas. I'm going to be taking all sorts of pictures, be doing a bunch of interviews, and reviewing some awesome movies. So make sure you guys are following me on Twitter at Deezus12 and on my Instagram, Deezus.12, to catch up on everything I'm doing up at the film festival. It's going to be super exciting. And the very last thing, guys, is check out the Pod Couple. I found this podcast not too long ago, and they have a very unique podcast, so I'm going to go ahead and let them tell you about it real quick.
Hi, I'm Pod Guy.
And I'm Pod Gal. And we're the Pod Couple.
I like horror movies.
And I like felt crafting.
I like drinking beer.
And I like beer.
Don't those humans piss you off?
Oh my god, the world is such a wonderful place. And I really want to go to a poetry reading.
And I really want to go to a wet t-shirt contest.
And we're the Pod Couple.
So join us, the Pod Couple, on iTunes,
Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, and wherever you find your podcasts.
the Pod Couple.
Are you guys just as confused by that promo as I am? Good. You should be. Go check out their show, guys. Their podcast is actually really funny. It's a real interesting one. Go check it out. Love those guys over at the Pod Couple. So we're going to go ahead and get into the bulk of the show here, guys. We're going to talk about these movies, and I am fucking so excited because I loved this pick that Tim gave. It is the 1974 classic, the OG Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, Tim, why'd you pick this movie?
Well, it's one of my favorite movies, and I've got a lot of. It's a very kind of a personal movie for me. It was one of the first one. I mean, it's one of the first horror movies that of like the major horror classics of the modern era, I guess. One of the first ones I'd seen as a kid. And I remember as a kid, it was back in like the 80s, 87, 86, something like that. People still thought it was a true story and all that. And then over the years, I grew up in Indiana, and that was where I first saw it. I moved to Texas years ago. Since I've lived out here, at a horror convention years ago, I met Gunnar Hansen. At a horror convention, I got his autograph. He played Leatherface in the original. John Dugan played Grandpa. I'm Facebook friends with him. I've met him at a couple conventions. We actually hung out at one show. I bought him a bottle of rum.
Oh, hell yeah.
And everything. Yeah. Terry McMinn, who played Pam. I've met her at a few shows. Took like a little group picture with her and John and Ed Gwynn, who was the truck driver. Took a little group picture with all of them at a horror convention. We were all guests at the same horror convention.
Oh,
so
nice.
That was pretty cool. And then we were taking a road trip up to Dallas one year, a few years ago, and we actually stopped at the original house. The house has actually been moved to another area, renovated, and is now like a bed and breakfast.
Really? But do they
it's a
advertise
cafe.
it like as a horror bed and breakfast, or they just not tell people that's what that house was?
They don't hide from it. See, it's like a cafe, and then there's like little trailers out in the front area where people can like rent like little cabins and stuff.
Huh.
And a lot of old people go there to camp and whatever, and they don't hide from it. You go upstairs and they have pictures and stuff hanging up, but they don't like market it as the Chainsaw House either, if that makes sense.
Well, I think they're missing out on an opportunity there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what. Maybe because they figure, I don't know what the deal is, but I know the manager asked us about what brought us there, and I told him I was a big fan of the movie and stuff, and so he told us he kind of showed us around a little bit and showed us upstairs. They had like some pictures hanging up and some other stuff and whatever, and me and my stepdaughter, it's on my Facebook page somewhere. I'll have to post it. I have to put it on my website. We reenacted the scene with the girl Pam running out and Leatherface picking her up and dragging her back in. I picked her up.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she was acting like she's screaming and stuff, and my wife took a picture of us like that. So,
yeah, you'll have to post that picture on Twitter so I can see it. That sounds awesome. Yeah, but it was such a great pick, and I'm glad that you picked a real personal one. I think this one, I mean, like you even said, you even base your books in fictional places in Texas. Is that from this movie, I assume?
Is what?
I said you even said that you base some of your book stories like in fictional parts of Texas. Does that come from this movie?
Well, I mean, certain parts of my books. I mean, the movie inspired a lot of things. I did a whole paper on, or like an article a few years ago about a lot of the things that Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of inspired. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was kind of, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, road trip gone bad stories.
Oh, yeah, that is a good
in
point.
horror. And that's kind of become a whole subgenre in horror. Also, scary rednecks.
Scary rednecks, and when the whole family is like crazy too, and it's like not just them.
Yeah.
That's
another thing. The Faceless Killer. Leatherface was before Michael Myers or Jason or any of those guys.
And that's exactly why I wanted to do this episode as like underrated slashers, because I mean you got like everybody talks about Freddy and Jason, Michael Myers, that's like the Trinity, but then I think Leatherface, and especially like rewatching this earlier, not rewatching, watching this for the first time, I'd seen like parts of it, but I've never actually gotten to watch it all the way through. My very first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I saw the 2003 remake first, which I also love that version as well. But yeah, watching this, I was just like, reaffirmed. I was like, Leatherface's behind Freddy Krueger is my favorite slasher. Like, he has, personality to him. He has the creepiest design, I think. With the outfit, the way he looks, his hair's all disheveled, the face, obviously, like wearing people's faces. I mean, everything about it, I think, is it's a fantastic design. But at the same time, like, the interaction with Grandpa and like his brother and like all that kind of stuff, it's just so interesting, and like he makes the creepiest sounds, and Leatherface actually like runs at people and shit. Like he does, like he doesn't do like the slow stalk. Like he'd be fucking booking it with that chainsaw, like chasing after people. And
it could be argued actually that Leatherface really wasn't the bad guy in that movie.
No, yeah, it'd be Grandpa essentially.
No, the Travelers.
Oh, well, yeah, because
they went into his house.
That is
he didn't go after
so
them.
True. That is
the boy went into
so
his
true.
house first, and then you got to keep in mind. I mean, it's obvious he's got some developmental problems, so he's a little slow, and you can tell that.
Yeah,
he's the one that protects and takes care of his family, and plus you're in Texas. In Texas, someone breaks into your house, you can shoot them. I mean, it's still that way in Texas.
Yeah.
So this guy just breaks into his house and just goes stomping around. And then Leatherface bashes him over the head and drags him in back. And then he's doing his business back there or whatever. And then there goes Pam. She goes stomping in the house too. And he goes after her and hangs her on the meat hook. And then you see him, he even sits down and puts his hand on his head and his face in his hands like, what the hell where are all these people coming from? All these people coming into my house.
Yeah. Oh my God!
So,
like that is so true, because I mean they go to the gas station. He was just like, oh well, people around here don't like it when you come into their house and stuff. That's not your property. And they he tried warning them. He did. I was live tweeting this movie because I've been doing a new thing on Instagram. I call them Deezus Tweet Reviews. And I'll live tweet a movie while I'm watching, and that's like, because I don't really write reviews anymore. That's kind of the best way that I can do it. So I was live tweeting this, which made it even more fun. And I even said that. I was just like, they are literally just walking up in these houses, just like, oh, like no thing. Like he literally just walks in, and he like thinks about it like 3 times and then still goes in the house. I was just like, you guys are all fucking dumbasses. Like they were all so stupid. So yeah, I mean, they were in their rights to do what they had to do, but of course, they do it in the most creepy and macabre fashions. So I went through phases while I was watching this movie. So the opening scroll happens. I was like, ooh, that's really cool, real creepy. And this movie is shot really well too for 1974. Like,
oh yeah,
it is gorgeous. Like it is shot so well. And then the movies happen. I'm like, all right, 25 minutes in, still no Leatherface. But then, like, the hitchhiking scene was great with the brother. I was like, all right, cool. But then, like, once everything started going down with Leatherface, like, I mean, I was getting so into this movie. And then the third act, I think, is brilliant. Like, the whole dinner scene. And when he fucking sticks her finger in Grandpa's mouth, oh my God, Tim, I wish you could have saw my reaction. Like, I was losing my shit here. It was so great. Like, do you have any favorite scenes in particular that you love from this movie?
Let's see. There's so many good ones. I always like the opening. The opening, just that opening when the van goes past the armadillo and stuff. You just get this, and the radio's playing. You just kind of, and the cemetery, the pictures at the cemetery and stuff. you just kind of get this sort of sense of dread, like right from the get go, that something terrible is about to happen.
Yeah, I love when they're like showing, so you like got the scroll, and then when they're showing the pictures, and like they even have like the camera sound in the background. I think that's super cool. That's super cool, and that's like something that's been taken in a lot of horror movies and stuff lately.
Another thing a lot of people don't realize either is that there's actually very little blood in the movie. People talk about how gory the film was.
That is true.
Their budget was so they had such a limited budget. They had very little actual blood. Most of it's implied.
That's very true, and people kept saying, they're like, man, this movie is brutal, and I'm like, I mean, it's not like super brutal, but it's intense. This is atmosphere, like you said, like, you know, they set the tone from the beginning, just this overwhelming dread of the area, like just like you said, and it's fantastic. Like, I think, like, this whole movie, not even just Leatherface as a slasher being underrated, I'd say this movie is very, like, I mean, people appreciate it, you know, as a classic in horror movies, and people definitely do love Leatherface, but like, people don't hold this to, like, you know, Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, which I think it is right up there with them, right there. I'm still, Nightmare Before Elm Street is still my jam, but man, this movie, I like this is one I can see myself like watching over and over again, because it's like, it's a very fun horror movie to watch.
Yeah.
So then the movie that I picked to compare it, because, you know, I was thinking of underrated slasher horror movies, is Candyman. And we won't talk about it too much. I only got to watch like half of it before we started recording anyways. But I just wanted to, you know, to make a reference point to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, so I was researching it, and Eddie Murphy was originally supposed to be Candyman.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, I was trying to wrap my head around that. I was like, all I heard was, I was just like, that. All I could hear was his laugh. I wouldn't be able to do it. But Tony Todd was such a perfect pick. Like, that voice of his is so, oh my God, I don't even know. Like, the opening score, which the score of Candyman is phenomenal, but then the opening score with Tony Todd's monologue over it, and whenever he said, "I came for you," I like simultaneously like got goosebumps, but like kind of got a half chub a bit too, because like Tony Todd is just, he's out of this world. Like, they casted him as the voice in The Flash for Zoom, and I remember I was like, that is so perfect, because Candyman is just so menacing. And you mentioned that you had met the director of Candyman, right?
Yeah, I've got some stories about that movie, and about my meeting with the director. So I was at Alamo City Comic Con 2 years ago, I think it was, and I had a table there. I wasn't a guest or anything. It's a big convention here in San Antonio. I had a table set up there, selling my books and whatever, and I was taking a break, walking through the celebrity area, and I saw that Olivia Diabo was there. She played the sister on The Wonder Years, and she's been on a lot of other shows. I always really liked her and everything, so I went over there, talked to her, and took a picture with her. It was like $10 to take a selfie with her, so I was like, okay, cool. So I took a selfie with her. I always when I go to these shows, I always meet like the B and C list celebrities, because they usually don't have big long lines, and they're cheaper. I don't want to pay $50-$60 to take like a cell phone picture and wait in line for 2 hours, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really nervous because, you know, she doesn't look like she's aged at all since the 80s.
Oof.
And so I'm sitting there talking to her, and she's like, oh, you know, what's your name? And she's like, oh, and she saw my vendor badge. She's like, oh, you're a vendor here? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what do you do? And I was like, I write horror books. I have a table here. And she goes, oh, my friend loves horror. Where's your table at? And I told her where my table was. She's like, what's your name? And she like wrote my name down and stuff. She goes, I'm going to send my friend over by your table because he really loves horror. He's really into horror. And I was like, oh, okay, well, sure, whatever. And I'm just thinking she's just being nice or whatever. And then a few hours later, this kind of scraggly British guy comes over by my table, and he starts asking about my books and, like, you know, so you're the writer, and, you know, has anybody ever made these into movies? Have you ever talked to anyone? And which book would you say is your most brutal? Which one's your funniest? Which one? You know, maybe 20, 30 minutes, and he's asking about what some of my favorite horror movies are, what some of my favorite horror authors are. And then he took a card, and he's like, well, he goes, I've made a few movies myself. And he's like, but I got to run. He goes, I'll be back later. He took one of my cards. Came back the next day, and we chatted a little bit more, and he told me that his name was Bernard Rose, and that he had co-wrote and directed Candyman, and that he has his own production company now, and he's always looking for new stuff, and he wondered which of my books that he thought would make a good movie, or whatever.
Whoa!
And so I kind of suggested some things. He picked some of my weirdest books. I had a 4-book series, and I had a volume with like all 4 books in one volume, so he bought that one, and everything, and then then he wandered away, and I about crapped my pants. I even Googled him to make sure it was him, and sure enough, it was really him.
Oh my gosh!
Like, holy cow!
Yeah, that's out of this world.
What's that?
I said that's out of this world. Like they's just like so nonchalant about it and seemed real cool.
Well,
like,
yeah, and so and it's weird because I'm trying, because like in my outwardly I'm like, oh, okay, well that's really cool, and in my head I'm like going, oh my god.
I can literally only imagine, like, damn, that's gonna be me if I have like any of those kind of experiences, because there's supposed to be some real cool people at this festival, and I'm just gonna be like trying to keep my shit together, just be like, all right, you got this.
I'm trying not to act like a spazoid. I'm trying to act like you've been like in this position before.
Like, hey, act like this is a person, okay?
So, and then a few months later, he messaged me on Twitter and said that he was going to be back in San Antonio screening his new film Frankenstein. I wanted to know if me and my wife wanted to come out.
Oh, nice.
And so we came out for that, and we watched. They're doing a double feature. They're showing Frankenstein and then Candyman after. So we watched Frankenstein, and then he did a Q&A, and he talked about the bee scene. He talked about the bee scene in Candyman, where he had the bees in his mouth, is almost scarier than the actual scene, because they used real bees in Tony Todd's mouth.
Yeah, they didn't
have CGI and all that stuff. So they he had this whole story about how they brought in a beekeeper and actually grew the bees on the set, and had all these. They had to they had to tape up their clothes and everything, and
yeah,
what's her face? The actress was allergic, so they had to keep an EpiPen on hand for her, and it was just crazy. So anyway, after Frankenstein aired, after the Q&A, they started to air Candyman. He comes over and asks if we want to go out and have a drink, or do we want to stay and watch the movie. So we're like, oh yeah, well, so we go out, and we're sitting out, because it was at a little draft house. So they got like their own little bar and stuff there. So for like the next 2 or 3 hours, we're just kind of shooting the shit, talking to him. He said he liked the books. He said he couldn't make them into movies for a couple reasons. The biggest being that they were just so graphic that he would need a theatrical release, and he wouldn't be able to get an R rating with them. But he said he enjoyed the books, so it was cool. It was cool just hanging out, Like I said, for like probably 2 or 3 hours, we're just bullshitting. He's talking to me like we're old pals or something. So. So it was a pretty neat experience.
Yeah, what a guy! Like, that sounds crazy. Yeah. So that's weird that I made that out of all movies to pick, I picked that one. And and like even the stuff you mentioned, like whenever I was researching into the movie, and like some of the behind the scenes stuff about Candyman is almost like more intriguing than Candyman itself. Like there's a lot of really interesting stories about the production of this movie, and I mean it was only on an $8 million budget. Super low budget. I mean, there were like, issues because people didn't want them to like film it in Chicago, and like, but that's obviously kind of a big thing in this movie, the setting of it. So there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff about Candyman. But Candyman again I think it's just one of those movies that just doesn't get its due. Even more than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like I said, I love Tony Todd. I think he's super creepy because I'm a big fan of the Final Destination movies as well. So I've always been a big Tony Todd fan. Candyman was one of my favorites growing up, and I'm one of the few people. I love the whole franchise. I think number 2, Farewell to Flesh, and then number 3, Day of the Dead, are also really good horror sequels. I think as far as horror franchises go, the sequels are never as good as the predecessor most of the time. I think, not even just as 1 or 2 of them. I think all 3 of them are very solid. None of them as good as the first one, though. I mean, the first Candyman movie, like I said, the score of this movie is so fucking lit. Like, as soon as the opening credits went, I, turned my stereo up, 5 more notches. It's so good. Do you have any favorite scenes in Candyman that you can think of? I don't know if you've revisited any time recently.
Yeah, I've rewatched it a few times. The whole thing's really creepy. I think the bee scene always weirded me out when he opens his chest and they're flying, they're coming out of his mouth and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think
that's always the part that gave me the biggest heebie-jeebies. Good, but I don't like bees, so.
yeah, I don't fuck with bees either, like not at all. And it's a very eerie film. It's very creepy, but it almost has like this, almost has like a horror fantasy vibe to it. A bit, and then again, like kind of with Leatherface, Candyman, you sympathize with this slasher because of what happened to him and everything. So it's like you sympathize with him, and he's almost, and the way Tony Todd plays him, he's almost kind of alluring, Like I said, like at one point I'm super scared of Tony Todd, but at the same time I'm like kind of aroused at like he has this thing going on, and he just plays Candyman so perfectly and like really embodied that character. And Tony Todd's one of those people. He shows up at conventions and he champions this character. I love people that are very committed to their characters and stuff. Super good. But two fantastic movies, two very underrated slashers. So to wrap up this episode we've already got a pretty good story out of you, but I wanted to do story time with our earliest horror memories, because mine just came back to me recently today. So what is like your earliest memory that you can remember of like watching a horror movie, like when you were younger?
I think it was, let's see, how old was I? I wasn't very old. I was maybe 6 or 7. I kind of vaguely remember it. I remember the experience of it more than the actual movie, but my grandma I was over at my grandma's, and she had on this movie called Dark Night of the Scarecrow, and this was like a made-for-TV movie. This guy that had like Down syndrome, he was kind of the town oaf, and he kind of walked around whatever, and he would play with this little neighbor girl, and they lived up as like a little farm community or whatever, and the neighbor girl fell off a tractor, and he tried to run her to the hospital to save her, and when she got to the hospital, she was dead, and everybody thought he killed her. So a bunch of the men around town, they thought that he was this dangerous, half-witted killer, so they went on a manhunt looking for him, and he hid inside of a scarecrow, like an actual scarecrow out in the field, and they found him hiding in the scarecrow, and they all shot him and killed him, and then he came back to life and like killed them all one by one.
Oh, snap. I think I've heard of that actually. Yeah. That sounds kind of familiar for some reason.
So anyway, that happened. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and scared the crap out of me, and I think I ended up sleeping on the floor of my parents' room for a few nights after that.
And that was kind of like your introductory into horror movies, you'd say?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know if it was supposed to be a horror movie, or maybe, I don't know what it was classified as, but yeah, I didn't really get into horror till probably my early teens. I was like 13 or 14, and then I started going to sleep over at friends' house and stuff, and they were watching like Jason movies and all that, and they scared me, but I didn't want to be chicken, so I'd watch it with them and stuff, and then I just started getting into it because I found it was less scary if you start rooting for the killer. Then from there I started reading Fangoria magazine and all that other stuff, and getting all into horror.
Oh, good old Fangoria. I was kind of similar. I started off real early. I think the memory I'm thinking of, I think I might have even only been like 4 or 5. Like this is like real early. But I remember, this will show how young I am though. But I remember at that age I was watching the House on Haunted Hill remake. The Taye Diggs one. Not very good. I've rewatched that since then. The remake is not as good as the original. But I remember my family was watching this, and my uncle was big into horror movies, and he was him and my stepmom were kind of like the biggest into getting me into horror movies. And but he had this movie on, and he wouldn't, they were watching it like in the living room of my grandma's house. I was supposed to sleep there, so I had no choice. I had to watch the movie because everybody else was either sleeping in the other room, so I literally had no choice to watch it, and I was getting terrified of it. And then but I remember my uncle pausing the movie, And he's like, what are you crying for? Because I was like in tears, and he's like, what the hell are you crying for? I was like, it's so scary. And he's like, this is a movie. He's like, it's not real. This is a movie. And he like had like some like fake vampire teeth. And he like gave me these teeth. He's like, here, put these in. He's like, now you can scare the people in the movie. And I watched the rest of the movie with fake vampire teeth in because it made me feel scarier than the actual movie. So, and that was like I said, that I had to have only been maybe 5 years old at the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. But then he eventually, he was the one that showed me The Fly, and then Cube, another one of my favorite underrated movies. Yeah, so definitely got started at an early time, but I didn't like fall in love with horror until like this past year. Like, you know, once I started getting more into reviewing and talking movies and stuff, and then just started falling in love with horror movies, and now I fucking can't stop. And now I've conned my way into a film festival. This is going to be a great time. So thank you so much, Tim Miller, for coming on. Like I said, you are kicking off this horror trilogy I'm doing here on Deezus Take the Reel. Super excited for this festival. Where can the good people find you?
My website is the easiest place to find me at TimMiller.org.
Go check Tim Miller out, guys. Follow him on Twitter as well. He does his horror ledger. Find some of his books. They're all over Amazon. Awesome stuff. So definitely go check out Tim Miller. And as always, guys, you can find me on Twitter at Deezus12. The podcast Twitter is at Deezus TT Reel. Make sure you guys are retweeting and sharing and spreading, and listen to this podcast with your squad, guys. Watch a scary movie and just put this on in the background. I don't care how you listen to it, just do it. And make sure you follow us on iTunes and all that good stuff. Get the reviews out there. And follow me on Instagram at Deezus.12. I do my movie reviews there, but then you can keep up with all the stuff I'm doing at the festival. So I will be in Oregon, guys. So next time you guys hear from me, I will have a super stuffed episode for you guys. It's going to be awesome. Thank you once again, Tim Miller, for coming on. Had a blast talking horror movies with you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. Peace out, motherfuckers. Let me just pause this shit real quick. Thank you guys once again for listening to Deezus Take the Reel. New episodes every Tuesday. If you like what you're listening to, make sure you're following along on Twitter at Deezus TT Reel. Retweet and share with all your homies. iTunes reviews, 5-star reviews, get you a shout out on the show. And make sure you stay tuned after the music for a little pre-show banter. Thank you very much. Now back to the dope music.